Don in London. Hello. My video is all about recovery and what's helped me along the way. I'm going to share from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, chapter 10. But before I do that, I'm just going to share the AA preamble, which is said at the beginning of every meeting I attend, because it puts me in the right frame of mind to share some experience, strength and hope. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I would say I don't represent AA or anybody in it. It doesn't have any spokespersons, and I'm certainly not a spokesperson for AA. I just share experience, strength and hope as I may. So, in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, what you see is what you get, and we call that, what I call it, attraction. What we see is what we get, rather than promotion, which is a notion that we can go to AA and we'll be fixed. Like all life, life is difficult, life is hard work, and then it becomes easy. As we get more skilled at living life sober, it does get easier. We get our feelings back, so that's a good thing. And hopefully our feelings fit our experiences as they happen, rather than us being angry for a whole load of reasons which have got nothing to do with today. So AA is about living in the day for me, and I can only speak for me. Just one voice, and it's the many voices in AA which really counts in meetings where we hear the wisdom of others. And when I can't get to meetings, I do read the books, this one particular, AA. So chapter 10, this one's to employers. Among many employers nowadays, we think of one member who has spent much of his life in the world of big business. He has hired and fired hundreds of men. He knows the alcoholic as the employer sees him. His present views ought to prove exceptionally useful to businessmen everywhere. But let him tell you. I was at one time assistant manager of a corporation department employing 6,600 men. One day my secretary came in saying that Mr. B insisted on speaking with me. I told her to say that I was not interested. I had warned him several times that he had but one more chance. Not long afterward, he had called me from Hartford on 2 successive days, so drunk he could hardly speak. I told him he was through, finally and forever. My secretary returned to say that it was not Mr. B on the phone. It was Mr. B's brother, and he wished to give me a message. I still expected a plea for clemency, but these words came through the receiver. I just wanted to tell you Paul jumped from a hotel window in Hartford last Saturday. He left us a note saying you were the best boss he ever had, and that you were not to blame in any way. Another time I opened a letter which lay on my desk. A newspaper clipping fell out. It was the obituary of one of the best salesmen I ever had. After 2 weeks of drinking, he had placed his toe on the trigger of a loaded shotgun. The barrel was in his mouth. I had discharged him for drinking 6 weeks before. Still another experience. A woman's voice came faintly over the long distance from Virginia. She wanted to know if her husband's company insurance was still in force. 4 days before, he had hanged himself in his woodshed. I had been obliged to discharge him for drinking, though he was brilliant, alert, and one of the best organisers I'd ever known. Here were 3 exceptional men lost to this world, because I did not understand alcoholism as I do now. What irony! I became an alcoholic myself, and but for the intervention of an understanding person, I might have followed in their footsteps. My downfall cost the business community unknown thousands of dollars, for it takes real money to train a man for an executive position. This kind of waste goes on unabated. We think the business fabric is shot through with a situation which might be helped by a better understanding all round. And the reason why this is important to me, this is me taking an aside. I used to employ people for big businesses, and from people who would do manual labour through to middle management and senior management. And I was involved in many aspects of their personal development. And when I look back, I don't think I ever sacked anybody for being drunk. At least I don't recall doing so. But I certainly did help people find other jobs when they were not cutting the mustard, but they weren't able to cut what was expected from them. And all that time I was a pretty heavy drinker, but I always got in 2 hours before time, and I was probably there 2 hours after time, doing what I felt I needed to make sure that things would work. And I was a resentful person because other people didn't do the same as me. I was always willing to go the extra mile in order to cover what needed to be done. And when I look back at all those times, it was full of fear of not being good enough. So there can be the instance where we're not good enough and we get sacked. Or we are good enough but we put extra in. And in my final job, which was not in any management capacity at all, I was fired for absence because I couldn't stop drinking. Continuing. Nearly every modern employer feels a moral responsibility for all well-being of his help, and he tries to meet these responsibilities. That he has not always done so for the alcoholic is easily understood. To him, the alcoholic is often seemed a fool of the first magnitude. And another aside here, the person who fired me by letter, sending it to an address where I didn't live, had a father who was an alcoholic, and he hated him. Well, how did I know this? Because he told me so, before he knew I was an alcoholic, struggling to stay sober. Because of the employee's special ability or of his own strong personal attachment to him, the employer has sometimes kept such a man at work long beyond a reasonable period. And also it's enshrined in law these days that alcoholism is an illness, and if we're doing something about it, we're less likely to get dismissed. But we can still be dismissed because we're not able to do the job, because of our illness, or just because we just can't do the job as required and as requested. Some employers have tried every known remedy. In only a few instances has there been a lack of patience and tolerance, and that is true. I know I was like that. Anyway, I'm going to try not to get off the point from here on in. I'll just read it through as best I can, but I will make asides if I feel it's relevant to my story, because it is about sharing experience, strength and hope of how it works for me, and from the big book. And we who have imposed on the best employers can scarcely blame them if they have been short with us. Here, for instance, is a typical example. An officer of one of the largest banking institutions in America knows I no longer drink. One day he told me about an executive of the same bank who, from his description, was undoubtedly an alcoholic. This seemed to me like an opportunity to be helpful. So I spent 2 hours talking about alcoholism, the malady, and described the symptoms and the results as well as I could. His comment was, "Very interesting, but I'm sure this man is done drinking. He has just returned from a 3 months leave of absence, has taken a cure, looks fine, and to clinch the matter, the board of directors told him this was his last chance." The only answer I could make was that if the man followed the usual pattern, he would go on a bigger bust than ever. I felt this was inevitable, and wondered if the bank was doing the man an injustice. Why not bring him into contact with some of our alcoholic crowd? He may have a chance. I pointed out that I had nothing to drink whatever for 3 years, and this in the face of difficulties that would have made 9 out of 10 men drink their heads off. Why not at least afford him an opportunity to hear my story? "Oh no," said my friend, "this chap is either through with liquor or he is minus a job. If he has your willpower and guts, he will make the grade." I wanted to throw up my hands in discouragement, for I saw that I had failed to help my banker friend understand. He simply could not believe that this brother executive had suffered from a serious illness. There was nothing to do but wait. And from my point of view, it's not about willpower, ever. It's about not having to have willpower, ever. Because we do the right thing, based on what we know. Presently the man did slip and was fired. Following his discharge, we contacted him. Without much ado, he accepted the principles and procedure that helped us. He is undoubtedly on the road to recovery. To me, this incident illustrates lack of understanding as to what really ails the alcoholic, and lack of knowledge as to what part employers might profitably take in salvaging their sick employees. And that's the key there. It's an illness, it's a sickness. Because if we could stop, we would. It's insanity to keep on drinking when it's killing us. If you desire to help, it might be well to disregard your own drinking, or lack of it. Whether you are not a hard drinker, a moderate drinker, or a teetotaler, you may have some pretty strong opinions, perhaps prejudices. Those who drink moderately may be more annoyed with an alcoholic than a total abstainer would be. Drinking occasionally and understanding your own reactions, it is possible for you to become quite sure of many things which, so far as the alcoholic is concerned, are not always so. As a moderate drinker, you can take your liquor or leave it alone. Whenever you want to, you control your drinking. Of an evening, you can go on a mild bender, get up in the morning, shake your head and go to business. To you, liquor is no real problem. You cannot see why it should be to anyone else, save the spineless and the stupid. When dealing with an alcoholic, there may be a natural annoyance that a man could be so weak, stupid and irresponsible. Even when you understand the malady better, you may feel this feeling arising. A look at the alcoholic in your organisation is many times illuminating. Is he not usually brilliant, fast-thinking, imaginative and likeable? When sober, does he not work hard and have a knack of getting things done? If he had these qualities and did not drink, would he be worth retaining? Should he have the same consideration as other ailing employees? Is he worth salvaging? If your decision is yes, whether the reason be humanitarian or business or both, then the following suggestions can be helpful. And this is important. This was written quite a while ago, so there are different employment laws around these days. And to what extent people can be benefactors, helpful, depends on the codes of conduct and the rules that your employer has. So it's always worth reading the employer's handbook regarding your status. And the one thing you must never do if you want to retain your position in work is lie on your application or lie about what's going on for you within the parameters laid down. Continuing, can you discard the feeling that you are dealing only with habit, with stubbornness or a weak will? If this presents difficulty, rereading chapters 2 and 3, where the alcoholic sickness is discussed at length, might be worthwhile. You, as a businessman, want to know the necessities before considering the result. If you conceive that your employee is ill, can he be forgiven for what he has done in the past? Can his past absurdities be forgotten? Can it be appreciated that he has been a victim of crooked thinking, directly caused by the action of alcohol on his brain? And that's a very big ask. I well remember the shock I received when a prominent doctor in Chicago told me of cases where pressure on the spinal fluid actually ruptured the brain. No wonder an alcoholic is strangely irrational. Who wouldn't be, with such a fevered brain? Normal drinkers are not so affected, nor can they understand the aberrations of the alcoholic. And anybody who is not an alcoholic may be thinking, well, why should I? Your man has probably been trying to conceal a number of scrapes, perhaps pretty messy ones. They may be disgusting. You may be at a loss to understand how such a seemingly above-board chap could be so involved. But these scrapes can generally be charged, no matter how bad, to the abnormal action of alcohol on his mind. When drinking or getting over a bout, an alcoholic, sometimes the model of honesty when normal, will do incredible things. Afterward his revulsion will be terrible. Nearly always these antics indicate nothing more than temporary conditions. This is not to say that all alcoholics are honest and upright when not drinking. Of course that isn't so, and such people often may impose on you. Seeing your attempt to understand and help, some men will try to take advantage of your kindness. If you are sure your man does not want to stop, he may as well be discharged. The sooner the better. You are not doing him a favour by keeping him on. Firing such an individual may prove a blessing to him. It may be just the jolt he needs. I know, in my own particular case, that nothing my company could have done would have stopped me for so long as I was able to hold my position. I could not possibly realise how serious my situation was. Had they fired me first, and had they then taken steps to see that I was presented with the solution contained in this book, I might have returned to them 6 months later, a well man. Now remember, this is written quite a while ago, and with the labour markets as they are now, retaining staff is not necessarily something that employers are keen to do when their employees are unwell. But they will work within the rules, but we will encounter prejudice, because who can understand an alcoholic unless they are an alcoholic? And this is no excuse on my part, because I didn't understand when I was an employer, and I didn't understand really what was going on for me. Had I known, could I have stopped? The answer is probably not. Not because of self-hate or self-obsession. That just goes with the territory. I just didn't know what to do in the end. But there are many men who want to stop, and thank God there are, and with them you can go far. Your understanding treatment of their cases will pay dividends. Perhaps you have such a man in mind. He wants to quit drinking and you want to help him. Even if it be only a matter of good business, you now know more about alcoholism. You can see that he is mentally and physically sick. You are willing to overlook his past performances. Suppose an approach is made to something like this. State that you know about his drinking and that it must stop. You might say you appreciate his abilities, would like to keep him, but cannot if he continues to drink. A firm attitude at this point has helped many others. Next he can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralise or condemn, that if this was done formally, it was because of misunderstanding. If possible, express a lack of hard feeling toward him. At this point it might be well to explain alcoholism, the illness. Say that you believe he is a gravely ill person with this qualification, perhaps fatally ill. Does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics, being warped and drugged, do not want to quit. But does he? Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? And these are tall, hard questions. And some of them are closed questions, as I would call them. Do you want to stop drinking? I would have said yes. Are you aware of what's happening to you? I would have said yes. Rather than, have you ever thought about your drinking situation? And what do you know about stopping? Those are open questions. If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he's fooling you? Because don't forget, as I was an alcoholic, I was fooling myself for a very long time. I didn't think I was fooling anybody else. I didn't even try. I don't know. This is at the end of my drinking, where it was very, very distorted. Anyway, this is what we're talking about. And that after rest and treatment, he will be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on all these points, be satisfied he is not deceiving himself or you. So if somebody offers to give you a multiple choice questionnaire about your well-being and health, where it requires a tick to answer the box, it's unlikely that you're going to actually tell the truth, and it's unlikely that you're going to ask open questions about how can I get sober. So there is no shortcut in this. This is just my opinion. And continuing, whether you mention this book is a matter for your discretion. If he temporises and still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer, he might as well be discharged after the next bender, which, if an alcoholic, he is almost certain to have. He should understand that emphatically. Either you are dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. If not, why waste time with him? This may seem severe, but it is usually the best course. And I'm sighing because it is. I was better off being sacked in my last job, but one. And then when I was ill with something else, when I got sacked, I was very upset. But how can an employer, if they're following the rules and regulations, decide otherwise? But they have to follow the rules and regulations, or otherwise they're just as bad. After satisfying yourself, your man wants to recover, and that you will go to any extreme to do so, you may suggest a definite course of action. For most alcoholics who are drinking, or who are just getting over a spree, a certain amount of physical treatment is desirable, even imperative. The matter of physical treatment should of course be referred to your own doctor. Whatever the method, its object is to thoroughly clear mind and body of the effects of alcohol. In competent hands this seldom takes long, nor is it very expensive. Your man will fare better if placed in such a physical condition that he can think straight and no longer craves liquor. If you propose such a procedure to him, it may be necessary to advance the cost of treatment, but we believe it should be made plain that any expense will later be deducted from his pay. It is better for him to feel fully responsible. Hence AA's slogan, I am responsible, because it does start with our own sobriety. If your man accepts your offer, it should be pointed out that physical treatment is but a small part of the picture. Though you are providing him with the best possible medical attention, he should understand that he must undergo a change of heart. To get over drinking will require a transformation of thought and attitude. We all had to place recovery above everything, for without recovery we would have lost both home and business. Can you have every confidence in his ability to recover? While on the subject of confidence, can you adopt the attitude that so far as you are concerned this will be a strictly personal matter, that his alcoholic derelictions, the treatment about to be undertaken, will never be discussed without his consent? It might be well to have a long chat with him on his return. And this implies that we're talking to a manager who has more power often in the old days, and a manager in the new regime of law, legislation and big corporate business has less power and less discretion, unless it's at the very, very top of organisations. To return to the subject matter of this book, it contains full suggestions by which the employee may solve his problem. To you, some of the ideas which it contains are novel. Perhaps you are not quite in sympathy with the approach we suggest. By no means do we offer it as the last word on this subject, but so far as we are concerned, it has worked for us. After all, are you not looking for results rather than methods? Whether your employee likes it or not, he will learn the grim truth about alcoholism. That won't hurt him a bit, even though he does not go for this remedy. We suggest you draw the book to the attention of the doctor who is to attend your patient during treatment. If the book is read the moment the patient is able, while acutely depressed, realization of his condition may come to him. And this is it, it's about getting clarity. Because once we're a week or two away from a drink, our clarity clouds back into drinking again. We hope the doctor will tell the patient the truth about his condition, whatever that happens to be. When the man is presented with this volume, it is best that no one tell him he must abide by its suggestions. The man must decide for himself. Hence my emphasis always in my videos about freedom of choice, getting our freedoms back, free of drink, freedom of choice, within the rules of society and their boundaries. So, yes, continuing. You are betting, of course, that your changed attitude plus the contents of this book will turn the trick. In some cases it will, and in others it may not. But we think that if you persevere, the percentage of successes will gratify you. As our work spreads and our numbers increase, we hope your employees may be put in personal contact with some of us. Meanwhile, we are sure a great deal can be accomplished by the use of this book alone. On your employee's return, talk with him. Ask him if he thinks he has the answer. If he feels free to discuss his problems with you, if he knows you understand and will not be upset by anything he wishes to say, he will probably be off to a fast start. In this connection, can you remain undisturbed if the man proceeds to tell you shocking things? He may, for example, reveal that he has padded his expense account, or that he has planned to take your best customers away from you. In fact, he may say almost anything if he has accepted our solution, which, as you know, demands rigorous honesty. Can you charge this off as you would a bad account, and start fresh with him? If he owes you money, you may wish to make terms. If he speaks of his home situation, you can undoubtedly make helpful suggestions. Can he talk frankly with you, so long as he does not bear business tales or criticize his associates? With this kind of employee, such an attitude will command undying loyalty. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentments, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Wherever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries, and, arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often this is not so at all, but sometimes our drinking will be used politically. One instance comes to mind in which a malicious individual was always making friendly little jokes about an alcoholic's drinking exploits. In this way he was slyly carrying tales. In another case, an alcoholic was sent to hospital for treatment. Only a few knew of it at first, but within a short time it was billboarded throughout the entire company. Naturally, this sort of thing decreased the man's chance of recovery. The employer can many times protect the victim from this kind of talk. The employer cannot play favourites, but he can always defend a man from needless provocation and unfair criticism. As a class, alcoholics are energetic people. They work hard and they play hard. Your man should be on his mettle to make good. Being somewhat weakened and faced with physical and mental readjustment to a life which knows no alcohol, he may overdo. You may have to curb his desire to work 16 hours a day. You may need to encourage him to play once in a while. He may wish to do a lot for other alcoholics, and do something of the sort may come up during business hours. A reasonable amount of latitude will be helpful. This work is necessary to maintain his sobriety. After your man has gone along without drinking for a few months, you may be able to make use of his services with other employees who are giving you the alcoholic runaround, provided, of course, they are willing to have a third party in the picture. An alcoholic who has recovered but holds a relatively unimportant job can talk to a man with a better position. Being on a radically different basis of life, he will never take advantage of the situation. Your man may be trusted. Long experience with alcoholic excuses naturally arouses suspicion. When his wife next calls saying he is sick, you might jump to the conclusion he is drunk. If he is, and is still trying to recover, he will tell you about it even if it means the loss of his job, for he knows he must be honest if he would live at all. He will appreciate knowing that you are not bothering your head about him, that you are not suspicious, nor are you trying to run his life, so he will be shielded from temptation to drink. If he is conscientiously following the program of recovery, he can go anywhere your business may call him. In case he does stumble, even once, you will have to decide whether to let him go. If you are sure he doesn't mean business, there is no doubt you should discharge him. If, on the contrary, you are sure he is doing his utmost, you may wish to give him another chance, but you should feel under no obligation to keep him on, for for your obligation has been well discharged already. There is another thing you might wish to do. If your organisation is a large one, your junior executives might be provided with this book. You might let them know you have no quarrel with the alcoholics of your organisation. These juniors are often in a difficult position. Men under them are frequently their friends, so for one reason or another they cover these men, hoping matters will take a turn for the better. They often jeopardise their own positions by trying to help serious drinkers who should have been fired long ago, or else given an opportunity to get well. And all of this is about avoiding cover-up. The more we cover up the problem, as we might have done in our own lives, and certainly in my life, I didn't even know I was covering up. I just thought I had to battle through whatever I was doing. So unaware was I. But I guess if I'd had an employer who understood what was going on for me, or even if they did understand, they could have gone two ways. Down the road to prejudice, which is quite acceptable from my point of view, because the sooner I'm fired from an organisation which doesn't want me, the better it would be. Or they understand there is something to do, and maybe there is a path which can be taken to help a person recover. And if that had been organisations in the past which I knew were like that, then I would have stayed maybe long enough to find a way back to normal living. But I don't look back and stare, because I can't change the past. All I can do is live with what is now. Continuing, after reading this book, a junior executive can go to such a man and say approximately this: "Look here, Ed, do you want to stop drinking or not? You put me on the spot every time you get drunk. It isn't fair to me or the firm. I have been learning something about alcoholism. If you are an alcoholic, you are a mighty sick man. You act like one. The firm wants to help you get over it, and if you are interested, there is a way out. If you take it, your past will be forgotten, and the fact that you went away for treatment will not be mentioned. But if you cannot or will not stop drinking, I think you ought to resign." Again, this is subject to the rules of how an organisation works, or where you work and your organisation. This is to an extent, this is a desire to help the alcoholic. It is not necessarily how organisations behave. And it's a difficult world right now. Continuing, your junior executive may not agree with the contents of our book. He may not, and often should not, show it to his alcoholic prospect, but at least he will understand the problem and will no longer be misled by ordinary promises. He will be able to take a position with such a man which is eminently fair and square. He will have no further reason for covering up an alcoholic employee. Now, I also know within our own health service in the UK, because I was asked on more than one occasion to talk to junior doctors about what is alcoholism and how does it present, and what are the prejudices that doctors and medical professionals develop because of lack of understanding. Notwithstanding that the medical profession is under high amounts of stress and produces as many alcoholics as any other profession, not wanting to be one can be the greatest prejudice when we are one. Continuing, it boils right down to this: no man should be fired just because he is an alcoholic. If he wants to stop, he should be afforded a real chance. If he cannot or does not want to stop, he should be discharged. The exceptions are few. We think this method of approach will accomplish several things. It will permit the rehabilitation of good men. At the same time, you will feel no reluctance to rid yourself of those who cannot or will not stop. Alcoholism may be causing your organisation considerable damage in its waste of time, men and reputation. We hope our suggestions will help you plug up the sometimes serious leak. We think we are sensible when we urge you to stop this waste and give your worthwhile man a chance. The other day an approach was made to the Vice President of a large industrial concern. He remarked, "I'm mighty glad you fellows got over your drinking, but the policy of this company is not to interfere with the habits of our employees. If a man drinks so much that his job suffers, we fire him. I don't see how you can be of any help to us, for, as you see, we don't have any alcoholic problem. This same company spends millions for research every year. Their cost of production is figured to a fine decimal point. They have recreational facilities. There is company insurance. There is a real interest, both humanitarian and business, in the well-being of employees. But alcoholism, well, they just don't believe they have it. Perhaps this is a typical attitude. We who have collectively seen a great deal of business life, at least from the alcoholic angle, have to smile at this gentleman's sincere opinion. And of course it is his sincere opinion, and he's entitled to hold it. He might be shocked if he knew just how much alcoholism is costing his organisation a year. That company may harbour many actual or potential alcoholics. We believe that managers of large enterprises often have a little idea how prevalent this problem is. Even if you feel your organisation has no alcoholic problem, it might pay to take another look down the line. You may make some interesting discoveries. And in the UK, this is me saying this, in the UK the National Health statistics around drug and alcohol dependence a couple of years ago was 1 in 13 of the adult population. And to have a dependency of that magnitude normally means you've got to be in work, or a large percentage must be in work. So it is a big problem. Of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, sick people, deranged men. What our friend the Vice President had in mind was the habitual or whoopee drinker. As to them, his policy is undoubtedly sound, but he did not distinguish between such people and the alcoholic. It is not to be expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. I'll say that again. It is not to be expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. He should not be made a favourite. The right kind of man, the kind who recovers, will not want this sort of feeling. He will not impose. Far from it. He will work like the devil and thank you to his dying day. Today I own a little company. There are 2 alcoholic members who produce as much as 5 normal salesmen. But why not? They have a new attitude, and they have been saved from a living death. I've enjoyed every moment spent in getting them straightened out. End of that chapter. And you know, I guess in my youthful management time, before I reverted to jobs like not digging roads, sweeping them, or doing handyman jobs and stuff like that, I had every judgment and prejudice you can possibly afford an individual who's grown up in an alcoholic household, but at the same time didn't know there was alcoholism around. So my attitude and behaviour towards people with an illness, an allergy or a malady, in early management, I didn't understand it, and I just thought they were not fit for work when they turned up with big hangovers. But I was forgiving because I did exactly the same thing, and I realised most likely my judgment was impaired first thing in the morning when getting over a hangover, which became a more frequent occurrence as the decades went on. So there will always be prejudice. The worst prejudice always is the alcoholic towards himself or herself, followed by the collaboration of other people not wanting us to be alcoholics, or realising we are and not wanting to deal with it, as we are not wanting to deal with it. So it's complicated beyond belief, and where we do find a path of sobriety, the very last thing an active alcoholic wants, until they realise that you can actually live without alcohol, is completely unnecessary and will not improve my day in any shape or form. But that's just me, and where I've got to, and where I am today. So a one-day programme, the only guarantee is if we work at life, stay sober, we have a better chance to find the truth, be open, honest and willing to change our attitudes and behaviours, and know we're probably not going to change the attitude and behaviours of anybody else. So at the end of the video, always for me the serenity prayer to the God of your understanding, or simply good conscience, or learning the truth, learning how to be open, honest and willing. God, or in good conscience, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference for me is always just for today.